Just as a side note, because we're on audio only, one of your cats did enter the scene and went along the piano and draped themselves over the top of the piano quite dramatically.
I often do that on my piano too, just so you know.
Yeah, they're perfect for that.
It happens a lot like that. It's
Doug's
weird.
a draper.
Welcome to the Two Authors Podcast, an entertaining chat show hosted by best-selling mystery and thriller authors Douglas Pratt and Nicholas Harvey, in lively, humorous and informative conversation with distinguished guests who share their thoughts and experience about forging a successful author career.
Welcome to the show, everybody. How are you, Douglas?
I am fabulous. How are you, sir?
You're rocking on your boat right there.
Just a little bit of rocking, so.
Actually, I couldn't see you rocking, but it's just cool to say you're rocking on your boat. You're rocking your boat because that's how you roll.
That's right. I rock and roll.
Well, the show, the Two Authors Podcast, that you're now listening to is brought to you by Vellum, best formatting solution in the whole wide world. And, you know, I'm hearing more and more people writing in Vellum. Our friend Kat Johnson, who we've had on the show, writes in Vellum. So you go, okay, well, if you write in Vellum, how do you send it to your editor? Well, what you do is you go to File, Export to Word, and it pops it out of Vellum into a Word file, send it to the editor, do the editing, come back, and then pull that Word file back into Vellum again.
Don't hold me to this because I could be wrong and just don't know what I'm doing, but I would dare say that Vellum's competitors don't offer that feature because I tried to find it in one of them once before. I'm not saying they do or don't because they may, and I just don't know. I was probably also could be an idiot, but I'm just saying it's a lot easier in Vellum just to go click to export the Word file. So because I was
You're
doing
not
that
an idiot, Dougie. You're not an idiot.
That's not true.
I
Ask
don't
my
care what
kids.
Ashley said.
Ashley would never say that.
All right. Well, big thank you to all our Patreon supporters. Thank you very much. We need to catch up pretty soon on our new Patreon supporters, but we're a little out of sync time-wise. But thank you guys for joining. If you feel you get some value from the show, not from us two idiots, but the guests that we have on and the interviews we bring you, then you can support us for just a couple of bucks a month at patreon.com/the Two Authors Podcast. And we would very, very much appreciate it.
You know what you get with that?
We're bunging a lot of stuff in there, man.
And we're throwing a bunch of stuff. You get some nuggets, our little podcast nuggets, which is you and I talking about whatever happens to be on our agenda for that day.
Or question asked. If you send us in questions, let us know what you want to hear about.
And also, we got almost every one of our guests now. We're doing little bonus questions afterwards to talk with them. So you get a little extra on video. So you get to see our lovely faces.
There is that.
It's a delight.
All right. Our guest today is Jen Danna, who writes under the name Sara Driscoll, and her new book that just came out is under Sara Driscoll. We'll chat with her in a moment. But first, a listener question from David in Tennessee, and he asks, when does a series character community, which fans tend to love, become too many characters and cumbersome? When do you get too many players, too many cooks in the kitchen, Doug?
I think it's going to depend. It's going to be a big depends. I think it's going to be like
a big pair of depends.
Big pair of depends. Part of it's going to genre is going to play. So for my books with Chase is pretty much a loner, but he's got a couple of friends that may or may not show up.
No, yeah, he's got his little community because he's got the lady, the landowner, the bar owner, right, that he's humping, and then he's got Jay Delp.
He's got Jay Delp, but Jay's gone off to his own series now. So yeah, there are times that he'll have some, but then there are also times when I have him himself on the water with, whatever trouble he gets into elsewhere. So I think it kind of depends. Where you want is you don't want to lose focus on your protagonist. You want to be able to continuously deliver good story arcs for all your supporting characters, I think. So you want to make sure that you're delivering all of that for your readers to the point where they're not overwhelmed with, one, a constant change of point of view. Like if every other chapter is 12 different people, then it's going to get a little tiresome, I think.
Well, there's a writing style that does that, where you go perspective, but that's a very distinct style and can work. But I do think in those too, you can get too many, right? And I don't know what that number is. Probably 3 or 4 is a comfortable number to be able to keep up with.
whatever George R. R. Martin did, if you could reduce that by about 10%, you'd totally be. Man, 10% is probably a little low. It probably should be a little higher. But if you could reduce that a little bit, you probably find it's a little easier to follow along. So,
an example from stuff I've been involved with was when we started the TA stuff, we did Graceless, and we took a new protagonist, and put him through the worlds of the four of us that were involved in writing Graceless. And so the protagonist found his way from the Keys to Grand Cayman, where he met my characters and interacted, and then went on to Cozumel, Nick Sullivan's, then Key West, where John Cunningham's were, and then on up to Marathon, and was handed over to Wayne Stinnett, who brought the story close. So when we did the second one, which was actually, Graceless is pretty much a full-length novel. It was over 50,000 words, I think. But the Timeless was definitely going to be a full-length novel. And we said, hey, there's enough interaction because Nick Sullivan's characters moves around the Caribbean to different places, and he was going to have them on one of the smaller island, Little Cayman. So one of Wayne's characters, his female character, left her sailboat in Cayman. So we had a reason to bring her there. And then and John's guy flies around, Buck Riley flies around all over the place in his plane, so we could bring him there. So we said, hey, let's just base it around Cayman. Let's do that, which was a fantastic idea until we realized that we did the same thing with a new protagonist that arrives in the Cayman Islands. And then we start pulling in those other characters as they show up and do things. And all of a sudden, we had this massive cast of characters, and it was too many. So it was fine when we took the protagonist and in different segments took them through those walls and left them behind. But now we had the problem of they were all together, and we quickly realized that it was going to become cumbersome. So we broke it up. Like we would introduce them at different times. We wouldn't have them all together. We ended up with them all together in a big scene. But we realized we had to break it up. Otherwise, it was like, okay, shit, how do we keep up with all these people doing all these things? So yeah, it can become cumbersome pretty quickly.
One of the important things to remember with all your characters, like they should all have a purpose. If you have too many characters and they don't have a purpose in the story, then you need to curtail their use. Yeah.
Yeah. What's their role? What are they doing there? Right. Yeah. Yeah. Perfect. Cool. All right. Good. Let's move on to our guest, mystery and thriller writer, Jen Danna, who writes under Sara Driscoll, as I mentioned. She released her latest Shadow Play, which is a standalone. It sounds like a really cool thriller. And she has book 10 in her FBI Canine series coming out later this month as this airs. And we're pretty excited to talk to her about dogs. So let's meet Jen. Hi, Jen. Thank you so much for joining us from the Great White North.
Thank you so much. We're not too great and white right now because it's summer and we've got 100-degree temperatures, and I'm ready for October.
Yeah, absolutely. You normally have lovely summers up there. It's probably hundreds a little extreme for you guys, isn't it?
Yeah, it's been July and August have been pretty rough for me. I'm like a spring fall kind of gal, so it's been hard. I've been hiding inside a lot. No writing on the patio this year.
There you go. There you go. Cool. We'll start us off. Give us, our listeners a little bit of background on how you first got into writing and when you were first published.
So I kind of came at writing from, sort of from the side. I was a voracious reader as a kid and as a teenager, and actually started writing, in my early sort of preteens. And the funny story is that I had a girlfriend who lived about 5 hours north of me in Sudbury, and she and I used to snail mail each other typed chapters of whatever book we were writing. And I dearly wish I'd kept those because there's nothing wrong with the learning curve, and I'm sure it was dreadful, but it would have been really entertaining to go back and look at. But then I kind of sort of fell off the writing train and, got busy in high school, went to university, got a science degree, got married, had kids, started my job in a science lab and that sort of thing. And then around the time that I was sort of in my late 30s, the bug sort of came back. You're in a job for many years and your kids aren't as young and they don't need you as much. And, the job, even though I was doing HIV research, it wasn't a boring job or a non-challenging job, but just, it was by that point kind of rote for me. And so I started kind of the creative side sort of started rearing its ugly head, or beautiful head in my mind, I guess. So I started writing again at that point. It was just writing for fun. I met my writing partner at that point, Anne Vanderlaan. And we were writing together for a while, and then we were just posting stuff online for fun. And some of our readers were saying, why don't you do this professionally? And we kind of looked at each other and thought, why don't we do this professionally? So we scrapped everything that we'd done. What Stephen King says, the first million words are practice. And they really were, and started a whole new series. And that one book, my slogan was sort of go big or go home. I didn't want to sort of look back at it 15 years later and think, well, why didn't I even give this a shot? And so we wrote that first book, Dead Without a Stone to Tell It, which is the first book in the Abbott and Lowell Forensic Mysteries. And then we started The Great Agent Query. I mean, a testament to how long this can take. I mean, people can get discouraged if they don't find an agent in the first sort of 20 or 25 tries. Nicole was my 144th query. But from the time that I queried her to signing with her was only 3 weeks. It's all a matter of finding that fit. We just really clicked right off the get-go. And then she sold that book. That ended up being a 5-book series. And then Anne and I moved over to Kensington. And that's where we started the FBI Canine series. And the 10th book in that series comes out in October. And I also do some standalones with them. Shadow Play is a standalone that's coming out on August 26th. And I also do the NYPD Negotiators series with them.
Wow. All right. There's a ton of stuff we want to get to amongst that there. Let's start with Shadow Play, because that will have come out when this airs. It just came out a few weeks before. And if I understand this right, this drops a physical therapist, Krista Evans, into a high-stakes world of live-streamed advice on Twitch.
Which is a gaming platform. Yep. But it does also has like a category called Just Chatting, where you can find political shows or sort of sometimes cooking shows. And in this case, it is an advice show. And so Krista's college roommate and best friend is a gamer. Krista, when she's chatting with clients while she's doing their physical therapy, tends to kind of get into relationship issues with them, and she gives them advice, and they come back to her with feedback and say that her advice is really good. So Haley says to her, I know a bunch of gamers. They could use some advice. Let's do this show on Twitch. And so they start this little show on Twitch. And by the time we join them, they're about 8 months in, and they've got a community started. And, it's a nice little place to be until somebody enters the chat and starts creating havoc.
Right. I read through all the blurb and stuff, and the more I read, I'm like, ooh, this is pretty cool. So now, did you know of Twitch beforehand, or did you research and try and find a platform that was kind of away from the obvious ones that most people know?
I admit it was not my platform, and it's probably my age, but this, my writing can in some ways be a real family affair. We tend to we brainstorm titles together, and we sort of troubleshoot story issues together. And at one point when I was trying to come up with sort of like a list of thriller ideas, just sort of 1-paragraph blurbs to send to Kensington. The first thriller was, greenlit, but we wanted to look at what book number 2 in the contract was be. My eldest daughter, Jess, suggested this idea where you could use Twitch as a platform. Now, Twitch was her gaming platform, so this was sort of near and dear to her heart and her age group, which is sort of your late 20s, early 30s, for many of them, not always, by a long shot. So she suggested that this would be a great way to sort of look at having an internet stalker. And certainly I've had a lot of feedback on this book. A lot of people have said, wow, I've never heard of Twitch before, but every platform could have this problem. And so it's an issue that kind of, comes, close to everyone's heart, because they realize that you put a lot of yourself out online, but who's on the other end? What are they seeing and what are they saying? And let's face it, I mean, internet anonymity gives people a green light to sometimes be their worst selves. And so this is, an example of that.
Oh, we have a good friend of ours, actually, Armando Rosamilia, he writes live writing on Twitch. He's a prolific writer, and that's one of the things. I had never heard of the platform before, and up until a couple of years ago, and he mentioned it. And he goes weekly, he's on there, and he'll bang out words, and he'll write a story, and people just tune in and watch him doing it, which is fascinating to me.
Yeah. Well, and Twitch has a lot of safety features, but, through this book, they're like going through each of the safety features, and the guy is just like sailing right past them. So they remain under threat for the whole book.
Okay. That sounds very exciting from that standpoint. It definitely puts it into a different perspective. So
yeah, it's kind of terrifying when you think of it. Because the other thing is this guy is a threat, and they have no idea where in the world he is. He could be on the next block, or he could be on the other side of the planet.
I didn't notice as I kind of look at your standalones, you have like a lot of non-law enforcement protagonists. So is that kind of like a conscious shift on your part? Are you trying to?
Yes. Yeah. Because the other two series, when I look at the Abbott and Lowell Forensic Mysteries aside, because she is a first-class trooper, with the Massachusetts State Police Homicide Department. The other two series are all sort of law enforcement from a slightly different angle. So it's, search and rescue, and then it's hostage negotiation. So it's not just your typical sort of gumshoe, beat cop, that kind of thing. It all comes from a different angle, but it's still law enforcement. All three series are law enforcement. So the standalones, I did make a conscious decision to, sort of stretch a little bit with different characters.
Now, you touched on it in the intro there. Your background is in science and infectious diseases. So that was your specialty, which is terrifying to think of for anyone that's not understands the nuts and bolts of that sort of thing. Just from the outside, it sounds terrifying. But you've obviously there's a forensics, which is, I guess there's some science crossover from there. But did you decided not to make a protagonist directly in the line of work that you did because?
At one point Anne and I came up with an idea for a bio thriller, and it didn't actually sell. And I was actually kind of glad of it. Now this would have been like 2016, 2017, like early. Because our first book was 2013. So it would have been sometime between 2013, 2016. I'm kind of glad that it didn't, because when you spend all day working on something, it's hard to then come home at night and work on it there as well. Like being able to, the forensic anthropology and the forensic mystery series was still sciencey, but it was like a entirely different branch of science. So it was still sort of like a refresh. But to work on infectious diseases all the time, it would have been, you've got to have a little bit of passion for the writing, and I didn't want the content of it or the plot of it to just sort of drag it down for me. And I also would have been really persnickety about making it 100% scientifically accurate, just because that's the way I am. And that might have taken some of the fun out of it. And let's face it, we all have a little bit of literary license, but sometimes it's hard to use it.
It's hard to use. That's what my background my first career was motorsports, and people are always asking, when are you going to write a book about racing? It's like, nah, I can't, because most things that end up in production about racing are just terrible. So they're so inaccurate.
Oh, wait a minute. What about Days of Thunder? That was a brilliant movie.
The Days of Thunder. So the rental car scene is about the only really realistic scene in the whole thing.
I like to give him a good hard time sometimes.
That would be like me watching CSI. My kids were basically like, nope, shush, don't say anything. Yes, they don't do PCR in 20 minutes in the dark, but don't say anything.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so one of the other things you touched on is your writing partner, Anne, who I know we lost. So talk us through that a little bit. So you had a very unique situation, which I love, is the fact that your pen name, Sara Driscoll, was the two of you.
So we wrote the Abbott and Lowell Forensic Mysteries together, but when we made the jump to Kensington, they just wanted it to be under one name. And so we literally just picked a name. So Sarah is the name of her granddaughter. And I mean, you'll love this from a business perspective. Driscoll is a name that's not on Amazon much. So Sara Driscoll was very searchable on Amazon. So we went with that.
That is really smart. Yeah. That's when you're coming up with a pen name, do that. So,
because I got tons of Douglas Pratts out there writing stuff.
So you're writing together. And how did you split up the writing? How did it work between the two of you?
We were a little different than most writing partners because, let's go back to sort of a humorous story of how we actually met. I was writing stuff for fun, posting it online. I'm a gun control loving Canadian. I always used to joke with her that she was a gun-toting Texan. And I made a gun error, and she basically texted me or, messaged me through the site and said, "You just killed your protagonist." I'm like, oops. And that started a conversation between us. And so then we started kind of thinking about stories together, and she started editing what I was doing, but then she started doing more brainstorming with me. And that's sort of what it ended up being, was that I did 100% of the writing, but we did all the character building and all the brainstorming together. And she was a very good editor. So I would write the chapters and send them to her, and she would rip it apart and send it back to me. And then we would build the whole story, and then we'd rip it apart and build it back up again together. Anne was a technical writer, so she wasn't sort of like writing, so good at the fiction, but she was great at editing. And I used to tease her that she let me borrow her very devious brain.
So, very sad. She passed 2022?
2022, yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, apart from the loss, that had to have been a big transition for you in your writing.
Yes. Yeah, it was. Now, luckily, I'd already sort of partially transitioned that. Anne was 20 years older than me. And so I always sort of knew, because I was sort of thinking I'm in this for the long haul. And I assumed that at some point she would want to retire. I mean, I was thinking she would retire and step down from the writing. So I had already started writing the NYPD Negotiators series. The first book in that series, 2020, came out in 2020. That was Exit Strategy. So I was already starting to morph into a solo author career. But where Anne was an extra huge help, besides just the brainstorming and the character building and the editing, was that she was a dog trainer. And she started off with standard schnauzers, and then she started rescuing pit bulls and training them into therapy dogs. And so when we started writing the FBI Canines, which came as a direct request from an editor at Kensington, he was looking for a police procedural with a canine aspect. And that message sort of came through our agent, and we sort of said, we can do this. We're already writing mysteries. Anne was a dog trainer, so we had sort of the basic building blocks to making this work. She then took one of her canines and did nosework trials, classes and trials with him, so that we made sure that we had all of the technical aspects of scent work down pat. We got all the way to Stillwater with Anne still with us, and she passed after that book was written. So That Others May Live was the first book that I did on my own without her, and that was a little tense for me because she'd had 7 books to really teach me everything that she knew about scent work. And thank God, I mean, bless her heart, she did. But then I was on my own with that. And it did actually turn out okay. But that was a little bit tense because, I didn't know that if I could be able to do the technical aspect of it. And of course, I missed her from the writing aspect as well.
Of course. Well, I'm sure she's proud of what you were able to do. And just as a side note, because we're on audio only, one of your cats did enter the scene and went along the piano and draped themselves over the top of the piano quite dramatically.
I often do that on my piano too, just so you know.
Yeah, they're perfect for that.
It happens a lot like that. It's
Doug's
weird.
a draper.
Ashley's always like, get off the piano. So, I don't know. So talking about like dogs, cats, all that, I can't imagine writing a dog as a major character. That's got to be a little bit tricky too. I mean, especially if you're going to try to remain kind of outside or remain with the dog's perspective and not like going to give him human thoughts. I mean, so
yes, and there are some authors that do that. There,
Racing in the Rain
point of view
was a classic one that did so well and was inside the dog's head. But of course, it's inside the dog's head, pretending the dog's human.
Right, exactly. So, but the way that these dog handler pairs work is the connection between them is so close that basically you are getting the dog's point of view through Meg, right? She can read her dog so succinctly that basically everything that is important that's going on in his head through her.
Okay. So you use like a physical reaction in the dog and what he picks up scent-wise, because it's a scent dog, right? We'll talk about that a little more in a bit. And then she interprets that. So
yes. And at this point, they've been working together for, several years. Like he's been in this role for several years. And so they're really experts at this point.
And the dog aspect, having the dog as a character, that's a big trope alone. There's readers that absolutely love having a dog involved.
Dogs
right?
are the best.
I'm fairly certain that there's a dog on the front cover of every book for a reason.
Yeah, I was going to say.
The Kensington cover designers are right on there.
Yeah. That series is mid-cover change, is it not? Because when I was looking through on Amazon, there's 2 that are, I presume, the old ones, so they're working their way through. The new ones in the new design. And they're on point. The new designs are lovely. Really good.
Yeah, but I thought the old designs were great too.
No, they're not bad at all. But definitely when you see them against each other, it's like, oh, yeah, that's very on point for 2025. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I got a question then real quick. So is Hawk based on a real dog?
Sort of. So my childhood dog growing up was a black lab named Shady. And Shady was a great old girl. We'd turn her out into the backyard and she'd go graze. She is no Hawk. Hawk is, like very highly trained and, a great dog, but very obedient and, snaps to the orders and that kind of thing, where we had a family dog. But the reason why Hawk is a black lab is because of my childhood dog.
I have a side question about the covers. So when they're doing the new covers, were you like, you better get Hawk right? He has did you have any input on that or to make sure that they had the look of the dog right?
Kensington is actually really good. They are really great about covers and everything. And if they bring me a cover and I have comments on it, they actually are responsive to that. Not all houses are, but they will go back and will actually change covers. Yeah. No, I mean, working with Kensington, they're not one of the big five, but I'm not actually disappointed in that. It's a real sort of family feeling, a real feeling of teamwork and collaboration. And so covers are just one example of that.
So, what are some of the, I mean, obviously the one trope that we all kind of know, that don't kill the dog, but are there any others?
Which one is the main protagonist in your series?
Are there other tropes associated, with having a dog and a main character together that we hadn't thought about? Like Nick and I have a series where we put a dog in there, but he's not a main character; he's more of a side character. But
we screwed up when we did it because we made this international series basically where our protagonists go into different countries, but we introduced the dog in the first one when they were based around home, and then we're like, bugger, we can't take the dog with us.
Or at least there could be some major restrictions about it.
Exactly. He was in quarantine for the whole time that it took place.
No, I mean, that is the big one. The don't kill the dog. And I do have people email me, start the first book and say, I've just started Lone Wolf, and does the dog die? No, none of the main character dogs will ever die, because for starters, I couldn't live with me if I did that.
That'd be terrible.
Yeah.
Now, all bets are off. Everybody in the series gets beaten up in some way at some point, including the dogs. So one of them gets attacked by a cougar. Hawk gets shot in the very first book. These things do happen. They are essentially law enforcement animals. And so they are in the same risky environments as their handlers.
So with Hawk as a character, we're used to building character arcs through our books and through our series. Is there a conscious effort to do something similar with Hawk?
To a certain extent. I mean, his experience is building as they're going through different cases. So for instance, FBI agents and FBI handlers have to do continuing education just like all the rest of us. And so for still waters, they're actually sent out for decomposition in water training, because normally live scent dogs don't deal with bodies of water. You get to a body of water and you are done. You can't track it past that. That's a different set of skills.
I learned that in Bonanza. So
yeah.
Just saying, the Cartwrights always got away because they got, we got,
just
the
step
water,
into a
step in the
stream.
water,
Yep.
bam, yeah, Bonanza.
Yep. But so that's an example where there's a German Shepherd is the other sort of main dog, Lacey, and Hawk and Lacey and Brian and Meg go off for, this water training in Minnesota at the Boundary Waters area, which is, this great area, but it's way out in the middle of nowhere. So yeah, there is growth with them. They're learning new skills and that kind of thing. It's not quite the same as with, the human characters, because again, we're not inside the dog's head. So it's a little harder to show a real character arc that way. It's amazing what these dogs, these dogs are, modeled after real dogs. It's amazing what these dogs can do.
Talk about the Meg and Hawk are part of this FBI's human scent evidence team. So have you been able to chat with or spend any time with the actual members of this kind of a team?
So this is also kind of funny. So when I first started writing the Abbott Lowell Forensic Mysteries, I reached out to the Massachusetts State Police. They were lovely. I traveled down to Essex and to Salem in that area, and they had me come in. I met with the district attorney for Essex County, and I met with the head of homicide, and they sent me off with a binder of their protocols that I then, FedExed back to them later so I could write everything absolutely properly. When I came to working with the FBI, I have never hit such a wall in my life.
I wondered if that would be the case.
It was a little abrupt following the wonderful, greeting that I got from the Massachusetts State Police. But I had this media person who I remember her name was also Anne. We don't do this, talk to the NYPD. And I wrote back saying, I'm not interested in dealing with the NYPD because at this point I wasn't. That was years away for me. And she's like, they have dogs. I'm like, but it's not quite the same. So she gave me some very minimal information. But by and large, I had to do it all as internet research. There was just, I've never had a door slammed shut so quickly.
So quick as the federal government right there.
Yeah.
We're here to help.
Yep. Slam.
The police, I write a police procedural now that I just started. It's based in Dana Point, California. And I reached out to the Orange County Sheriff's Department while I was there. And it took a little bit of being passed around some. But I ended up with a Zoom call with a homicide investigator. And they're very guarded.
But they need to be.
Yeah, which obviously so. They can't discuss any cases, but I didn't want any cases. I just wanted to know general procedure stuff, and what I could make accurate, I tried to make as accurate as possible. But they were fantastic to deal with. They really tried to help, yeah.
Well, a lot of people really are. Like, they're flattered that you are interested in what they do. And so for a lot of people, if they can help, they're happy to.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's weird. Once you tell somebody you're an author, everybody's got ideas anyway, so they're happy to talk to you about it.
So let's jump back to the to Shadowplay and your standalones. How are you balancing continuing the series and sliding in the standalones? I mean, presumably you have a commitment to Kensington to meet both, right? How do you balance that?
Well, part of the things that really helps is that all three are with Kensington and all three are with the same editor. So he absolutely understands the pressures that I'm under. And basically it's a February 1st, June 1st, October 1st deadline. And so I just, I've got 4 months to do each book. And you guys know how it goes. I mean, while you're drafting a book, you're in copy edits for the last one you handed in. You're doing proof pages for the next one, and you're launching a fourth one. So I'm usually working on 4 books at a time. It's a little nuts, but yeah, you guys know how it goes. It's never, people think you've got 4 months to write a book. Well, not really.
No,
That'd be nice.
That's not exactly it.
Yeah. So you're kind of juggling. I try to do 3,000 words per day as a daily word count.
That's a strong word count.
Yeah, that's about what it takes to usually working 6 to 7 days a week at this particular point in time. So
yeah, that's a lot.
Looking to slow down at all?
Yeah, next year I'm currently writing the last of the standalones in this particular 3-book contract. I think next year I'm going to give myself a break and drop down to 2 at least for a year, just to give myself. I need to sort of recharge the creative juices, so to speak.
All right, so we got a couple of questions we're going to end up with. We ask everybody here. What do you think is your author's superpower?
I would, and this kind of goes back to my scientific career, I would say research. And it's kind of funny that you word it like that, because in the Canines, there's an investigative reporter called Clay McCord, and they have teased him before that research is his superpower. And so, you guys know what it's like. You're writing about stuff that might not be in your wheelhouse. Like, you're not writing about, racing, and I'm not writing about infectious diseases. So there's stuff that we have to learn. And like, for instance, for That Others May Live, I took the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers course on structural collapse. I'm currently doing a course on offensive penetration testing, because in the current book that I'm writing, she's a white hat ethical hacker. So, you need to have this background to be able to write these books convincingly. I mean, there's going to be some hand waving. There always is, because if you get too far into it, you're going to bore your readers to tears. But you definitely need to have a basis to be able to write this kind of stuff. And so that's sort of my strength, I think, is that I really sort of dive into a topic. And people come back to me saying, they really enjoyed the fact that they learned something, be it mountain climbing, or in Deadly Trade, which comes out in October, the 10th Canine book, it's volcanoes and wildlife trafficking, that kind of thing. So I like to learn something when I read, and a lot of the people who read my books, fall into the same kind of, into the same lines. They like to learn something.
All right, we'll wrap it up with our final question, which Doug will dig out our wheel of questions.
We have a wheel of questions.
Is it fixed? I know sometimes something was broken, right?
It was actually, but now it is fixed. So yeah,
there you go.
You've heard the rumors, huh? But it's working now. So, all right, ready to go? Somewhat working. Still got a little.
It's
wobble.
Quieter though, Doug.
I don't know
it's
what
a
I did.
lot quieter.
I don't
You've
know what I
silenced
did
it
to make it. Maybe because I'm holding it. Maybe if I let it sit down. I don't know. anyway, we'll just slow it down. It's going a lot longer too. I think maybe I oiled it, and that was the problem.
Yeah, that's the trouble. You've silenced it and it spins for 20 minutes.
It does. What's a piece of writing advice that you ignore?
Oh, that I ignore. Well, I think we could sort of fall back on the write what you know. I mean, that's sort of like a lot of people do the write what you know things. And I just think that just limits you too much. It's nice to add in some of your own knowledge, but you shouldn't be held back because you need to do the write what you know thing. And that's where the sort of research as a superpower comes in. There's all sorts of things that you can learn that you can then translate into your prose.
I think that's good. I think that the write what you know can be taken too far, right? So what you've written in your series are very procedural, there's forensic. You've worked in sciences, you're very well educated, you know how to study things, you know how to research things. So you are writing what you know as the basis of it, right? The fundamental is there. You just chose a different branch of it, I think. So, yeah, but that's good. The best of luck. I'm sure Shadowplay, when this airs, Shadowplay will already be hitting the charts and be killing it for you. And then it's number 10 in your Canine series that'll be coming out in a couple of weeks when this airs. So looking forward to that. And it has a purpley cover, which looks really cool.
Yeah, October 28th.
Yeah, cool. Well, the best of luck. And thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. Had fun.
Thank you so much, Jen. That was really great. I mean, just dogs in general. Like, that's smart, writing a whole series about dogs.
It's a popular trope to have animals, a critter in your story. Kyla Stone, of course, our good friend Kyla, she has a brilliant dog in her post-apoc series. And it's popular. There's lots of cozies out there with them.
Well, our good friend Dave Behrens, who does both of our covers, told me, I think last year at Ink, that he had somebody who came back through and redid all their covers, and just the only thing they did different was they added the dog as the character on the cover, and bam, sales went up. So I don't know. Need to write a whole book about dogs. People love it. I do think it kind of adds a little realism to it because everybody, for the most part, has a pet or and so animals and critters are really a part of us as a
family members,
as a humans. They're totally family members. I think it is valuable. I mean, if you have no dogs, I mean, a lot of people don't have animals, but for the most part, there's so many people with animals out there that it's just a part of everything they do. So it's realistic. That's why I loved putting one in our book. Missing in the Keys. It was fun. I would love to do some stuff more with him because it was a fun character to throw him in there. So,
and it's based on a dog of yours.
Oh, he is. Yes, he's based on my dog. Or my son's dog, Wrench.
Yeah. So we got to figure that out. Yeah, we did dumbass that where we then took him off to Zanzibar and Hawaii where we couldn't just take the dog with him. But
right. Yeah. Well, that's okay. We'll think about the next one. So,
book 4, we'll loop him in. Yeah.
It could be all about. It could be just Wrench, just doing everything.
Missing in Wrench. So, yeah, a good friend of mine, Trisha O'Malley, who's writes fantasy kind of rom-com stuff, and she's huge. She does really, really well. She's got a new trad book coming out. She's been indie, and her dog that we met in Bonaire, because she and her husband lived in Bonaire for a long time, and we met them down there. And we met Blue, her dog, lovely. Blue is in some way on the cover of the new book that's coming out, kind of an illustration type thing included in that story that she's done. And I know that means a lot to her as it comes out. So it's pretty cool.
Dogs are important. Like I named Chase Gordon's boat after one of my dogs, and so putting them in there is kind of like it's important. I think that dogs play a lot to all animals do, So
yeah, I have dogs in my AJ series. I have a dog, a pet dog, and in my new cat series, she has a critter at the house from book 2 on. So it's good. Yeah, key parts of the stories and people. I think one of the things about it is it's especially when you put the critter in peril. Don't kill the dog or any other critter. Yeah, be careful with that. But when you put it in peril, there's a higher emotional attachment to that than there is a lot of the time to the human protagonist, right?
Oh, completely. Yeah. So everybody gets all upset when the dog gets shot, even if it doesn't die. But man, we're worried to death about it. So
Cool. All right. Well, thank you, Jen. If you feel like you get value from the show, from the guests that we have on, please support the show on Patreon. It's at patreon.com/the Two Authors Podcast. Your kindness helps us cover the cost of bringing the show to you. Big thanks to our wonderful friends at Vellum. Best. So go to tryvellum.com/two authors. You can find out more, and you'll find links in our show notes to Vellum, the feature we mentioned at the beginning, our Patreon, our guest links, our books, all the things. So check out the show notes.
Everything you could want. Nick's feet pics are in our show notes. If you want.
No, people do not want my feet. I'm very self-conscious about it. You will not find feet pics of me. All right, until next time, be cool to each other.
All right, fair winds and following seas.
You've been listening to the Two Authors Podcast with Nicholas Harvey and Douglas Pratt. Subscribe on your favourite platform for new shows coming every week.